Am I really that much to handle? Breaking these niggas down like a camel. You don't really to throw you up.
Hi stars, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm so excited. So between the last YouTube video and now, I have officially released my first independent project as a filmmaker. I'm so happy, I'm so proud, I'm so excited. Anyone who knows me from time knows that storytelling has always been the number one thing I wanted to do in life. I used to be a Wattpad writer. I used to write for the school's magazine. I used to just always write, and 10 years ago I decided that I wanted to go into screenwriting, directing, filmmaking. I feel like I made that decision long before 2016, but 2016 was when I officially started working towards it, and I did a lot of directing church play, church drama, just little here and there plays as a hobby. And I've been learning a lot from friends that are in the Nollywood, in the Nigerian film industry. But right now I can officially also call myself a filmmaker. I'm so proud, I'm so grateful to God Almighty, because everything happens in its season. It's so funny because that's not even the plan for my debut project. So my debut project is a web series. Well, was supposed to be a web series or a short film about some aspects of my grandma's life. And I decided to volunteer for Princess Bukola and Princess Adeshile for Ojude Oba. And yeah, I was just going to be volunteering. But a few people I spoke to when I was reaching out for media, press, vibe type of thing, not to get too deep into the story, but a few people kept saying, oh, there's a strong story in this. Are you doing a documentary? Are you doing a story? Are you doing a film? Like, sort of, what are you doing for yourself? And I was like, oh my God, like, that's actually true. I don't want to be cringe asking, oh, can I, but anyway, long story short, I decided to eventually do a documentary about not just Princess Adeshile, but about young Ijebu women that are changing the narrative around our history, but also just to really celebrate and emphasize that Yoruba as a society has always been progressive when it comes to gender equality. So I decided to go with that lens when I embarked on the Ojude Oba project. And yes, officially I am a filmmaker. So excited. So check out my film YouTube channel. It's Tobai Studios, and of course, knowing me, the person that I am, Tobai Studios is an acronym of all my names. So like Tolu Lokpe, Okpeyemi, Bukola, Anoluwapo, Ido, Tobai. Yeah, so that's how I came up with the name Tobai. I haven't decided how I want to pronounce it, if I want it to have a Yoruba intonation or not. So at the moment I call it Tobai Studios, and I think maybe it would just be Tobai Studios. But yes, check out Tobai Studios, Ojude Oba, where women stand strong. You're going to enjoy the documentary, coming soon to YouTube. Okay, let's get into the video for today. Okay, first off, before we get into the video for today, as a multifaceted creative that I am, of course, I've talked about my film. I'm going to talk about my fashion brand, so that the sibling rivalry, I don't want my fashion brand to be jealous of my filmmaking brand. I'm just joking. But yes, I am wearing the Nolly head from my fashion brand, Anu Signature, a subsidiary of Anu Fashion House. So this is inspired by the Nollywood film industry. As you can imagine, I am such a Nolly head, and I went into a filmmakers event one of these days, like 2 years ago, so a while ago, and I bumped into a bunch of fellow Nollywood lovers, and I was like, oh my God, you're such a Nolly head. And yes, that was how the name Nolly head came about, and I decided to make it into a t-shirt because I'm such a Nolly head. I would write an essay about the issue of all the films, vintage Nollywood films, and I won't get bored. Okay, let's get into the video for today. Last video, I talked about how I overcame my fear of public speaking. I was able to balance my confidence in a way that I wasn't always coming across as too cocky, but I wasn't being too timid in an attempt not to come across as too cocky. Finding the balance, the confidence, if you get what I mean. So today I got inspired by last month's video. So today I'm going to talk about how I overcame some of my struggles as an autistic person. Right. Okay. I have to obviously make a disclaimer that this is not a video offering medical advice, and I am not claiming I'm cured from autism. I am just saying that there are some of the nuances that comes with having autism, level 1 autism, and I was able to sort of navigate some of the struggles. It doesn't mean like all of the struggles have gone away, but it just means that the way it affects me it's not as obvious anymore. And it's not because I'm masking. No, I'm not masking. It's just not as obvious anymore, because I've kind of like learned to navigate the social world around me in a way that it doesn't overwhelm me. I hope that makes sense. Let's get into it. So obviously, being an autistic person, there's a lot of struggles. Growing up, I didn't know that I was autistic, but it was very obvious that I was, if that makes sense. Social interaction was a big struggle. Emotional regulation was a big struggle. Gosh, don't go and ask about me from high school. They'll tell you I'm crazy. Gosh, yes, emotional regulation was a big struggle. Social interaction was a big struggle, although people might argue that it wasn't necessarily a struggle, because I've always been kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. I had like this diva attitude since I was a child, in a way that I came across as confident, but I wasn't necessarily good with building strong social bonds, or building, when it was one-on-one as well, it was fine, but when it was a large crowd, sometimes I get lost. I don't really like talking about my autism, because it always feels like I'm trying to explain and tell people that I'm really autistic, like I'm trying to prove that I am. Yeah, and it's just always long, like anyway, one of the things that I struggled with the most was communication. Yes, I struggled with not just emotional communication, but just communication in general. Sometimes my words still sort of twist when I'm talking really fast, or when I'm not talking really fast. It just vibes. My brain is just like, oh yeah, we're gonna twist words today, and it twists. Yeah, so we're going to talk about 5 books that I read that helped me overcome some of my struggles as an autistic person before I even found out that I was autistic. I've done the story time before of how I found out that I probably had autism, Asperger's, which obviously is no longer referred to as that, and is now referred to as level 1 autism. But even the level, a lot of medical personnels don't like to use levels, because it sort of can sometimes invalidate struggles that people experience. So we just say being on the spectrum, because it's a spectrum. I can be very good at communication and very bad at emotional regulation, and it's kind of where do I sit on the spectrum type of thing. So we just call it autism now. But at the same time, when I say I have autism, some people look at me like, what are you talking about? You look so normal. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of how do I explain it? A lot of, what's the word? A lot of bias as to what an autistic person is supposed to look like. I don't think bias is a word. A lot of stereotype. Yes, there's a lot of stereotype as to what an autistic person is supposed to look like, and people say, oh, you look so normal, and don't prophesy what's not yours on yourself. You know how our African community can be. Anyway, yes, let's get into it. The 5 books that I read that sort of helped me navigate some of the struggles I experienced as an autistic person before I even realized I was autistic. So we're going to start with number 5 and talk about communication. So a lot of autistic people can sometimes struggle with communicating how they really feel. Sometimes you're processing so many things in your head that you're just like, before you finally find the words to wrap around on what you want to say. I think for me, I won't talk about autistic people in general. I'll talk about my own experience. I've been told I was too blunt. I'm too blunt. I'm too direct. I'm rude. So oftentimes when I was offended, I would try not to say anything, because I was worried I would come across as too blunt, too direct. Or, even when someone offends you, and then when you talk, you now say your own, you now end up being the one in the wrong because you said too much. That used to be so me, like so direct. I'll say what's on my mind, I don't care. But because obviously I got told off for that a lot, I now started like over processing what I had to say, and sometimes I just won't say anything out of fear of I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I don't want to get into trouble. So I started bottling up emotional communication a lot, and I won't really share how I was feeling. And sometimes as well, it's emotional regulation is something I really struggled with up until I turned 25, and even now it's not like perfect, but I've made a good progress. Yes, because of that as well, sometimes I'm like, I don't really want to say what's on my mind because I'm not even sure what's on my mind yet. Like, I need time to process and understand and be able to label exactly what I was feeling. Yeah, with all that said, this book called Say What You Mean by Oren J. Suffer was a big game changer for me. I'm just going to of course I have my little book dividers in it, so I'm just gonna scroll randomly and try and pick one or two words or phrases that I've highlighted, and to really show how this book helped me. This book was actually very powerful. I think I read this book when I was 21 or 22. I can't remember. the numbers are starting to blur. I'm getting old. But it says our intention can determine the whole tone and trajectory of a dialogue. Intention is where we're coming from inside. It's the motivation or inner quality of heart behind our words or actions. So when I read this, I was like, So this is from chapter 2 of the book, and it says the title of the chapter is The Second Step, Come from Curiosity and Care. So when I read this, I was like, this makes sense. So instead of worried that I'm going to say too much or worry about being too direct, why not I shift my focus? I'm focusing on the wrong thing. I'm focusing on, not being too direct, not saying too much, not being too blunt. Why not I focus on what I have to say, like the intention behind why I want to say what I want to say. So this is just one of the many examples that this book helped me. Like, I'll highly recommend, even if you're not an autistic person, you're just someone who wants to improve on your communication, I'll highly recommend reading Say What You Mean by Oren J. Suffer. So I wrote a few. Let's see. I like to scribble when I read, so I wrote a few notes. So some of the notes I wrote here is having discernment in conversation, choosing when to speak, speaking consciously and not automatically. So that one really helps me, because when I'm angry, when I was angry and I would just say things bluntly, I just said exactly how I was feeling. But obviously, as I started to get older, I started to understand that humans really don't like hearing the truth. Like, just because that's really how you're thinking it in your mind doesn't mean that's how you should say everything out. So you have to consciously pick out the words that you have to say. This is why a lot of autistic girls on the neurodivergence community on TikTok talk about how we kind of have to work twice as hard compared to neurotypicals to navigate the social world around us. Because I guess for neurotypicals, it comes natural for you to know that you shouldn't say exactly what's on your mind as it is. But for us, it's like you kind of have to keep picking and choosing your words and being careful. I'm not saying that neurotypicals don't pick and choose their words. I'm just saying for them, it's not, their brain doesn't process things the way our brain does. So they automatically, it's not an effort for them to know that they have to pick and choose their words. But for me, I guess maybe it's an effort, but it's not so much of an effort. But for us, it's like, it's different, because my brain would naturally defect into just speak like that, and then people are not wanting to be my friend, and I'm like, oh, why are they not talking to me? And it's like, well, you're rude, the way you speak is extremely rude. And it's like, okay, yeah, I should work on that. So yes, Say What You Mean by Oren J. Suffer was like a game changer for me. It really helps me. I still can be very rude, very blunt in how I speak, but I'm learning how to navigate it, and sort of also knowing that I can say the truth but soften it, because neurotypicals don't like to hear the truth. if that makes sense. Okay, so we are going to go to book number 4, and book number 4 was Defining Decade by Meg J. I was so annoying with this book because when I was reading this book, I was literally telling everybody, have you read The Defining Decade by Meg J? Like, this book changed my life. I think I'm gonna give saying all of these books changed my life, but this book really changed my life. I think this book made me realize that my brain changes, our brain changes as we get older. I don't know why. Even it's a thing in psychology as well, where when I was in uni, we learned about neuroplasticity, and scientists learning that the brain changes based on how neuron synapses, rather than what we thought as the brain being this structural organ that doesn't necessarily change. And we're like, no, actually the brain is more conscious than we had given it credit for. So yes, before I learned that in my psychology degree, I had kind of dabbled into pop psychology on neuroplasticity a bit through The Defining Decade by Meg J. And I realized that if my brain changes by the time I'm 25, so neuroplasticity starts to reduce by the time you get to 25, but before then, like, your brain is constantly changing. Even after then, your brain is still constantly changing. So this is where the idea of when you're 25, the frontal lobe develops conversation came from, which is true, by the way. I've experienced it. Like, literally when I turned 25, my brain literally, like, it was like an awakening. It's like, that's not my friend. This is not how I want to be treated. That's not what I want to do with my life. You know, like, things started making sense and I became more confident in who I was. But yes, when I read The Defining Decade, I realized that if my brain experiences like very, very fast neuroplasticity, fast is not the right scientific word here, I'm just using it loosely, then maybe I can start teaching my brain how to change itself before I turn 25, which is the whole idea of neuroplasticity. But I now started to think about what exactly about myself didn't I like that I wanted to change before I turned 25. So this was how this book came into the picture. So I read this first, and then I went on to read Say What You Mean by Oren J. Sofer, and yes, worked on my communication. So now let's talk about number 3. Number 3 is, I don't like talking about it, but it is Facing Love Addiction. Yes, you heard that right. Some people are addicted to love. I was such an addict of falling in love too quickly. And when I learned that I was autistic, it started to make sense. And I learned that autistic people tend to, we don't easily like open ourselves to people necessarily. Well, I don't want to keep generalizing, but we don't easily make friends. Not all autistic people easily make friends, but when we do like someone, it's almost like it's like, oh my god, how was I existing and functioning before you came into my life, you know? So yes, I used to fall in love very quickly and have my heart broken, and for so long I used to be like, what is wrong with me? Like, why am I already like fantasizing about how many kids we're going to have? And I know, like, sometimes, yes, girls do this. You don't have to be autistic to do this, but I guess it's the level of how you do it that makes the difference. So for me, it was like, I just met this guy. Yeah, it's been a day, 2 days, and I'm already fantasizing about, because I like him. Not every guy I meet, not just to clarify, not every guy I meet, but when I like a guy, it's been a day, 2 days, I'm already like deep in. I'm calling constantly, I'm texting constantly, I'm checking up on him, I'm checking up on him so much. I'm like being obsessed, basically, in a way that is even unhealthy for me. I'm hyper focused. That is the word. I'm hyper focused on this guy. I'm not doing anything anymore. I'm like, when is he gonna call me? When is he gonna text me? When blah blah blah. So obviously I started to like try to understand all these. By the way, all these that I was trying to understand was even before I got my diagnosis. So by the time I had gotten my official diagnosis that yes, you're autistic, it was like, oh, I wish you had told me sooner, you know, like you've told me when I've kind of managed to navigate most of the struggles that a teenager goes through by herself. But yeah, I guess the validation still helps, like, okay, that's why my childhood was the way it was, type of thing, and you know, some other like struggles that I deal with. But yes, so I started to like try to understand, why am I like this? I see these other girls, my other friends at the time, where they're talking to a guy and they know how to play the hard to get game and they don't reply constantly. But me, I'm waiting by my phone. When is this guy going to text me? And I'm getting mad that he hasn't texted me, and I'm already like having all these expectations from a man that I barely even know. So I don't know how, but when I was deep, I do a lot of deep dive research. I not really much anymore now that I started a business. I don't have time. But before I when I had a lot of time on my hands when I was a teenager, I used to do a lot of deep dive research. So one of my deep dive researches from podcast or YouTube, I think I bumped on Facing Love Addiction by Pierre Melody, and this book helped me. It helped me to be aware of what exactly was going on when I fall in love too quickly or get attached too quickly. It helped me to first see even that was a problem, and then be able to see how to sort of like navigate the problem. So I'm gonna like just obviously like I just open a random page. I'm gonna read a part that I've highlighted here. And it says that many of us think that the right partner will complete a missing part of ourselves, finally making us feel whole. We also believe that this ideal lover will reveal the meaning of life to us. But each one of us has the potential to feel whole and fulfilled from within ourselves, to the extent that we can develop our competence in self-love, self-protection, self-care, self-awareness, and self-containment. This book changed me. So I'm now like, the way I read here, I don't just read it. So I'm now reading, what does it mean to develop competence in self-love? What exactly is self-love? What is self-awareness? A lot of autistic people don't really have strong self-awareness, I guess. So I now started to like read more about self-awareness and was able to develop self-awareness. I developed self-awareness very, very late in life. So that's another thing about autistic people. Our emotional development and social development is much slower than that of our peers. So the level of emotional development and social development that our peers would have developed, well, it's me specifically, the level of emotional development and social development that my age mates developed at the age of 18, mine came around 21. So imagine like late puberty, but the emotional and social version of it. So I'm now, this is around like age 22 or 23, I'm now like, okay, what is self-awareness? And imagine I didn't even know what it was, and I'm now like, okay, how do I build self-awareness? So that was one of the ways that I was just really like trying to understand and really like, yes, overcome emotional. So in the process of like reading about self-awareness and self-love, and I'm now learning about what it means to be emotionally balanced and feeling fulfilled by yourself. So I'm now also exploring conversations around emotional dysregulation. All of this, by the way, was before I found out that I was autistic, but I was already like coming across all of these terminologies and all of these struggles, and I was like, yes, this applies to me. Like, yes, I do struggle with this. And it's like, okay, how do I overcome it? So I'm now reading and navigating and trying to understand how to, yes, approach life better. My book number 3 was Facing Love Addiction by Pierre Melody. So it helped me navigate emotional dysregulation and understand more about self-awareness and feeling whole within myself. So now we're going to go to book number 2. And book number 2 was How to Win Friends and Influence People. So among all of these 5 books, this was the one I read the last actually, but I need one of the books to be number 1 because that book not only changed my life as an autistic person, it also changed my relationship to God. So I'm putting this as number 2 so that one can come as number 1. So How to Win Friends and Influence People was written by Dale Carnegie. Like, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name properly. And this book is a very, very old book. It was first published in 1953. That's how old this book is, and a lot of people talked about how this book changed their lives. But did not necessarily read this book because I wanted to win friends. I feel like the name is a bit misleading, but I was able to understand how to navigate social dynamics without being annoying every time. And it's a lot of practice, because sometimes I really want to be myself, but people don't like my real self, because she's too blunt, she's rude, she's direct, she doesn't send anybody, she no send. She no send. And I guess that can be a good thing, but it's just always about finding the balance, especially in the creative industry where your personality is also a currency. It's like, you have to kind of learn. Yes, you have to kind of learn to navigate social interactions. So that was one of the main reasons why I read this book, and it was very helpful for me to sort of learn. So let me just read a random on principle 3. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. So basically, this one is talking about how to make people feel important and why you should make people feel important. Because, like I said before, my natural self would default to I no send. If you no send me, I no send you. But it's kind of how to not because you're pretending or you're being fake, but just because you're learning how to navigate that social dynamics. It's one of these things we have to do as humans. So, let's do it. So another thing he talked about was how to interest people, not to talk about yourself too much, something that autistic people naturally struggle with. We get so hyper focused on our own interests that it's all we want to talk about, and people can find you to be annoying or to be self-absorbed when you do that. So these books help me to let the other person speak more and not to default to, oh yeah, that happened to me, when they're talking, or yes, that's happened to me before. I can relate, because apparently that is rude, even though like when autistic people do it, we're not doing it to be rude. But I guess like I've had someone do it to me before, and then I kind of saw or realized how it felt, and I'm like, okay, I guess why they say is rude now. So principle 5 says talk in terms of the other person's interest. And then let's see. So this is principle 5. It says talk in terms of the other person's interest. And then I wrote some notes. I said focus on the other person. It helps to make observation, to give genuine praise. So when I said make the person feel important, you're not just making them feel important just because but more because you've actually spent time learning about this person and communicating and interacting with this person, and you've observed so many things that makes this person really special, that when you talk about them to them, you're genuinely praising the things that you like about them. So again, I said it's not about being fake. It helps to make observation, to give genuine praise. It helps you to be an active listener as well. It helps you to focus on reasons for their behavior so as not to condemn or criticize them. When you're more interested in the other person, you would naturally remember points about them. So yes, how to win friends and influence people really helps me with social interaction. It's so funny. I read this book last year, like just 2025, and that was when my social interaction skills really improved. And now 2026, people are always telling me, oh my god, yeah, you don't seem as someone that is socially awkward. And I'm like, thank you. If you met me before, you wouldn't say that, but thank you. I guess, yes, the books I've read have really helped me. So now to number 1, the book of the books, the book that this book changed my life. I went to find this guy on LinkedIn, and every time he comments, he makes a post, I'm always commenting that this book changed my life. This book changed my life. This book not only changed my life, it changed my relationship with God. It changed the way I pray. It changed the way I believe, the way I have faith. Like, this book changed my life. And the title, this book did a lot of good things to me. I can't even start talking about what this book has done to me. Like, this book made me reconnect to my childhood passions and made me embrace my special interest in a way that I started to think, okay, how can I transcend my special interest? And that was what got me into fashion, because this book asked me a question, that if there was one thing in this world that you never want, like you would do easily without having to get paid, without thinking about time, thinking about money, if money wasn't a problem, what is the one thing you would want to do? And then it came to me, I was like, writing. But then I'm not thinking, yes, but I've been writing all my life. Like, think again, what else would you want to do if there was no money involved, time wasn't a hindrance? And it was like, fashion. I love fashion. And that was when I realized that, oh my God, I knew needed to be born. So that's kind of how I read this book in 2023, and then that was when I decided that I wanted to start a fashion brand, and I officially started April 2024. So this book that I keep hyping about, the title of this book is The Power of Letting Go by John Perkins. Oh, this book is strong. This book is powerful. So let me give a disclaimer, because I've talked about how this book has really helped me with navigating my faith and navigating my relationship with God. So this guy is not a Christian. He's one of those universalists, I believe in the universe type of guys. He was born a Catholic, but now he believes that God is the expansive energy in the universe type thing. But if I start to listen, this book did a lot to me. So if I start to talk about why it helps my relationship with God, we wouldn't live here. But I will again say, this was just when I was like few pages in, and I was already making so much notes. This book really helped me. So one of the points I highlighted was, at some point we let go completely. In other words, we surrender. When you surrender, you let go of ego. So who are you? You're pure awareness, pure consciousness, pure presence, and pure being. In Vedic terminology, you are the self with a capital S. How does all this relate to the things you want to happen, which hasn't happened yet? The point is that many of us try to force things to happen. You may have lots of positive thoughts about what you want to happen. You may also have lots of actions to try and make it happen, and everything stays more or less the same. However, once you let go completely or surrender, there is no ego left to do the forcing. Desires are then realized easily from pure being, pure consciousness, pure awareness, pure presence, pure light. And then I wrote pure light equals manifestation of God. I don't know, even though like this book wasn't necessarily talking about God in a way that the Bible or Christianity would talk about it, the more he just kept saying you let go of everything, and you let go of ego, you let go of wanting things, you let go of forcing things to happen, and you just surrender completely. All I could just think about was just letting go and trusting God, you know. So this book really helped me. But let's not deviate, as I'm not talking about my faith today. I'm talking more about how this book helped me in terms of my autism. So I want to find a few things that really helped me. Let's talk about this part of the book that says appreciation will improve your relationships. It says many of us have tried to fix other people. It doesn't work. When we focus on what we do not like, we usually get more of it. On the other hand, if we focus on what we appreciate in other people, it can transform our relationships. I'm not talking about flattery. I'm talking about looking for what we appreciate in people and focusing on that. Remember that when we looked into how to win friends and influence people, it also touched on this a bit. So it goes, it helps them to feel good about themselves and to flourish. And when I read this book, I was just like, okay, like again, going back to social interaction and building social relationships. One thing about me is like when people do something I don't like, I automatically just curl back into my shell and I'm like, okay, yeah, now you've hurt me, you're gonna hurt me again. But this book made me realize that actually know that because you're focusing on, oh, this person has hurt me, you're gonna hurt me again, you keep getting that. But rather when you focus on the other things about them that you like, it changes your perspective and the way you view and interact with people. So this really helps me with my social interaction. But let's talk about how it helps me embrace my special interest. So here it goes, be grateful for your talent, intelligence, and energy, and your ability to work hard. It goes, you may feel you've earned what you have through your intelligence and hard work. You may also see yourself as talented, but where did all this come from? Weren't you given your talent, your intelligence, and your ability to work hard? In reality, we've been given everything so we can be grateful for it. Gratitude puts you in tune with existence. So in this book, it continues to refer to God as existence. It goes, when we are grateful, we're in tune with everyone and everything. Things happen much more easily. So before I got to this part of the book, there was another part of the book where he asked if there was one thing, what I said earlier, if there was one thing you wanted to do that money wasn't a problem, time wasn't a constraint, what will you want to be? Then when I now read this part again, that it says, weren't you given your talent, your intelligence, and your ability to work hard? In reality, we've been given everything so we can be grateful for it. When we are grateful, we are in tune with everyone and everything. Things happen much more easily. I now started to feel grateful for the things about me that I didn't like. So the special interests that I had as a child that made me feel weird, that made people look at me weirdly, differently, that I got picked on for, I started to appreciate them more. And yes, it gave me the confidence to start my TikTok page, where I started talking about Yoruba culture, because that's one thing I've always had a special interest in, and now everybody is in tune and vibey with Nigerian culture. It wasn't always the case when I was in school. Imagine I was a child talking about the Orishas. You would think my parents were worshipping Orishas at home. No, my parents were Christians, but I've just always been fascinated by the Orishas, and I'll talk about them in school and people will be looking at me like, oh my god, this girl is weird, this girl is crazy, this girl is a witch. But now everybody wants to know about Oshun and Shango and all of that. Anyway, so I started to appreciate the things about me that I thought were weird. I started to embrace all of these things more. I started my YouTube channel in the process. I started my TikTok page in the process. I started just exploring all of my gifts and talents that God has given me. I started feeling more grateful for them. And the more I started to do it, the more, I wouldn't say things were like smooth and bed of roses vibe, but things, like the book said, things started to come more easily because I was in tune. And then it now made me go back to a Yoruba philosophy that when you're in tune with what you've been called to do in life, when you're in tune with your destiny, things will start to flow more easily because you're in line with your Ori. So everything in the universe will just sort of start to open paths for you, which is kind of what this book was saying, that when you're grateful, when you're in tune with everyone and everything, things start to happen much more easily. So yes, the more I started to feel grateful for my talents and I started to embrace my talents more, the more it was almost as if my spirit was guiding me towards, this is where you should go next, this is where you should go next, this is where you should go next. And I just kept going. I know that this has kind of deviated a bit from my autism struggles, and is dabbled into spirituality a bit more, but I just feel like as a human, I don't see my physical, my spiritual, my emotional and mental health as separate. I like to look at life from a very holistic point of view, and I'm just grateful for all of these 5 books because they've really helped me shape the woman that I've become now. And when people say to me like, oh, I don't think you're autistic, you don't look autistic, I don't get offended. If anything, I feel proud and graceful in a way. Not that I take pride in not looking stereotypical autistic, or I have a problem with people that look obviously autistic. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But just because I know all of the struggles that I've been through as a child. My childhood was very rough. It was very hard. My teenage years were also quite rough, especially with like navigating friendships. So because I know all of the struggles that I've been through and how I am now, so when people say, oh, you don't look autistic, I don't get offended. For me, it just makes me feel like, I guess I've worked hard enough to navigate the very, very confusing social experience that we call life, in a way. But I think also the way my parents raised me, all of my autistic traits, even to things as little as preferring to lay on the floor and I was steam, because one of my ways of steaming as a child was to sort of like just keep rolling around the floor, and every time my dad would be like, get up, what are you doing, get up, it would be like very firm with me. But what I'm trying to say is like that very firm parenting style, I think it also helped me, even though in the West African community it's very controversial with autistic people. People say you shouldn't be like the Nigerian parenting style. Some people think it can be too harsh for people with autism, but I can't really speak on it, because maybe if I knew I was autistic when I was a child, it would be different, but I didn't. But I'm saying that parenting style also helped me as well, like the way my parents raised me. I think it also helped my autism in a way, aside from these books. And again, I'm not saying that I'm cured from autism, that these books cured my autism, or my parenting style cured my autism. No, I'm just saying that I've learned to navigate social dynamics and social situations, which is something I'm very proud of, because it wasn't something I was easily able to do, and I still struggle to navigate it now. But again, it's a journey, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And yes, I hope that you'll be inspired to read any of these books, even if you're not autistic, because I think they can really shape you, especially if you're in your adult formative years, so the years just leading up onto the age of 25. I think these books are very, very powerful books to read. And even if you're past 25 as well, I think these books are very powerful to read. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening to my rant. I love ranting. Gosh, I've been talking for almost an hour now. I need a drink. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next month again. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about next month, so you just kind of have to like subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you know when I post, so you can see what I have for you next time. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you on the next video. Bye.